Okay, ready for a deep dive into a name that, well, it practically defines modern horror. You know the one I mean, Annabelle. That terrifying porcelain doll from the movies, a total icon of fright. But what if I told you the movie version, it's really only a tiny piece of a much bigger and maybe even more disquieting story?
Yeah, that's right. We're not just talking Hollywood here. We're actually digging through the layers of the real-life history that started it all. And that story is, well, it's chilling in its own way and way more contradictory than what you see on screen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to take you on that journey. We're going to try and unravel the surprising, sometimes really strange, and honestly pretty captivating history of the Annabelle doll. From her genuinely innocent start, believe it or not, through those infamous paranormal investigations, right up to today's controversies and some unexpected new guardians. We'll hit the facts, the legends, the skepticism.
And that deep human fascination we seem to have, the unknown.
It really is a compelling look at how just a simple object can become this lightning rod for belief and fear, and sometimes even really profound grief.
Absolutely. And to really get Annabelle, you got to go back, way back to a surprisingly bittersweet beginning.
Yeah, picture this. Indianapolis, Indiana, 1915. This cartoonist, Johnny Gruelle, known more for political satire, actually. He's the one who came up with the first Raggedy Ann doll.
And the really sad part about her origin, the core of it, is the tragedy behind Gruelle's daughter, Marcella. She was 14, and she got really sick after a smallpox vax. Was, before the CDC, before a robust public health system. So a tragedy like that hit even harder.
So to try and cheer Marcella up, Johnny found this old plain rag doll up in their attic, and he lovingly spruced it up, gave her that iconic red yarn hair, the big stitched smile, that little triangle nose.
They named her Raggedy Ann.
Right.
And the name itself, it's got this interesting double meaning. It came from two poems Gruelle liked, The Raggedy Man and Little Orphan Annie. And that second one, Little Orphan Annie, if you remember, it tells these spooky stories about goblins snatching kids who misbehave. So right from the get-go, there's this little touch of the macabre.
Wow, I realized that. And then the heartbreak just got deep. Marcella Gruelle died just 2 months after her dad patented the doll, November 8th, 15.
Yeah. And the legend kind of goes that Johnny poured all his grief into Raggedy Ann, started writing those children's books, maybe trying to spread the kind of joy his daughter. Really powerful story, but historians still debate, how accurate.
True. Some skeptics are like, nah, that's mostly myth. But Gruelle's own granddaughter, Joni, she said it was mostly accurate.
And that mix of documented fact and family stories is really interesting, isn't it? Because you can draw this eerie parallel to the fictional doll maker Samuel Mullen, Annabelle creation. Both fathers grieving young daughters, channeling that sorrow into a doll. It sort of hints at this deeper universal thing about grief.
Definitely. And Gruelle himself, he didn't live that long either. Died unexpectedly at 57 in 1938, just weeks after winning this big lawsuit over the creative rights to Raggedy Ann. Makes you wonder. Some people looking back might whisper, maybe Marcella's spirit wasn't happy about how her sad story was being...
Well, whether it was supernatural or not, that early link to tragedy definitely set a kind of precedent for the doll's future. It wasn't too long before Raggedy Ann stepped out of the kids' books and into something much, much darker.
Exactly. So let's jump forward. Maine, 1953, a place that even then just had this kind of dark vibe in the American imagination.
Oh, yeah.
Rocky coasts, deep, foggy forests. It's total Stephen King country. As the hair on your arms stand up.
Yeah, it's an evocative setting and perfect almost for a truly horrific crime. Portland, May 1950. The bodies of Charlotte Adams, she was 40, and her daughter Caroline, just 12, found in their apartment. Their throats had been brutally slashed. The Boston Evening American even reported defensive wounds, suggesting a real struggle.
Oof. And the prime suspect, Douglas P. Adams, the husband and father. Just a quiet guy, apparently. No history of violence, no record, no obvious mental illness.
Yeah.
And bafflingly, no clear motive.
Right. And when the police confronted him, he gave this chillingly weird statement. He said, legally, I am guilty, but morally, that's a different story. And then he just clammed up. Wouldn't explain further, claimed he'd been planning it for 3 days, but didn't know why.
So strange.
Yeah.
But what really stands out here and feeds directly into the whole Annabelle legend later on is this weird detail at the crime scene. Yeah. A life-sized Raggedy Ann doll was sitting neatly in a chair right near Caroline's body, completely undamaged. It wasn't tossed aside or covered in blood. It was placed there intentionally, almost like it was watching. Or for some people, maybe even controlling things.
So how do you read that? I mean, a psychologist might look at it symbolically, right? A child's toy caught up in this awful domestic tragedy. But for people looking for something deeper, especially as belief in the paranormal was starting to rise.
Well, the doll becomes a conduit.
Exactly.
Douglas Adams's weird lack of motive, that almost robotic confession, it really echoed stories of possession where people claim unseen forces made them do.
In this case, even though it's totally separate from the later Annabelle story we know, it perfectly shows how an object can become this focus point for a community's anxiety. People project their fears onto it. It helps explain why, like the historian Owen Davies found, belief in ghosts jumped from like 10% to nearly 40% in Gallup polls over 75 years. It just laid the groundwork for Annabelle's later fame.
Yeah, that shift in thinking really set the stage, because just 17 years later, another Raggedy Ann doll would spark this truly terrifying saga, this time in a small apartment in Hartford, Connecticut. And this time, the doll wouldn't just be at the scene. She'd be the absolute heart of the horror.
So that takes us to 1970, which was, an era of serious moral panic. You had occult stuff creeping into music, like Black Sabbath hitting big, and the Manson murders were still casting this really long, dark shadow. People were genuinely scared.
Right. And against that backdrop, the most infamous part of Annabelle's story kicks off. In Hartford, this nursing student, Donna Jennings, she was 28, gets a vintage Raggedy Ann doll for her birthday. Looks totally innocent, right? Just a piece of old Americana.
Yeah. But within days, weird things start happening. Cold drafts out of nowhere, shuffling sounds, whispers at night, and these creepy notes scrawled in what looked like childish handwriting, asking for help for some Lou.
Ugh, notes. Okay, that's unsettling.
And it got worse fast. It went beyond just like bumps in the night. The doll actually started moving on its own, jumping from room to room.
No way.
Yeah. And they'd find its arms and legs arranged in these really grotesque, disturbing poses. But the thing that truly freaked them out, the detail that really grabbed the public's imagination later, they found this thick red liquid smeared on the doll's hand, and it looked disturbingly like human blood.
Oh my God, imagine waking up to that, the sheer terror.
Exactly. So these things kept escalating, and Donna and her roommate, Angie Teckleton, they finally called a psychic for help. And this is where the doll gets her fame.
Oh, okay.
The medium holds a seance, and this spirit comes through claiming to be a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins. Says she died on the property years ago. The spirit claimed she was lonely, just wanted someone to play with, and was using the doll to get it.
Okay, so they hear this story.
And this was the absolute turn. The nurses, Donna and Angie, they felt sorry for this supposed little girl spirit, so they made this they gave this spirit permission to move into the doll.
Well, and they invited it.
They literally invited it, renamed the doll Annabelle, and then unbelievably started treating it like a real kid, buying it gifts, including it in stuff. This act of compassion, this welcoming the unknown, it's such a critical moment in so many of these paranormal stories.
But not everyone was buying it. Angie's fiance, Lou Carlo, he hated that doll, felt really uneasy. He started having these horrible recurring nightmares where Annabelle was strangling him. He'd wake up terrified, feeling like its little cotton hands were actually wrapped around his throat.
Chilling. And it wasn't just a bad dream either. It was like a warning, because it escalated to a physical attack. The haunting got way more intense. Lou heard noises in Donna's bedroom one night, went to check it out. He found the doll tossed. As he got closer, he suddenly felt excruciating pain. Looked down and found these deep, bloody claw marks gouged right into his chest. This was it. Undeniable physical proof that something deeply malevolent was happening.
Okay, that's the point of no return, right? Claw mark. You call someone. They were totally traumatized. They went to a priest who recognized this was serious, way beyond his scope, and he immediately contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren,
the famous paranormal investigators.
The Warrens. And the Warrens came in, assessed the situation, and delivered this really sobering diagnosis, one that would basically define Annabelle's legend forever. They said, look, there's no gentle spirit of a little girl named Annabelle Higgins here. That was a trick.
A deception.
A demonic deception. They believed it was a demonic entity that had fooled the girls, using the doll as a kind of focal point, a conduit to generate fear. And the ultimate goal, they said, wasn't to possess the doll demons possess people, in their view. It was to eventually possess one of the roommates.
Whoa. Okay, so the doll itself wasn't the evil thing. It was just a tool. A tool for a much bigger, much more danger. And the danger, according to Ed Warren, didn't stop when they took the doll. He told the story about the drive home with Annabelle in the car, said the brakes failed, the power steering went out multiple times, almost caused crashes. He claimed he had to pull over, do a roadside blessing, and literally douse Annabelle with holy water.
Seriously. Okay, that's intense.
Yeah. And their solution wasn't let's destroy this thing. They believed destroying the doll would just unleash the entity to find someone else, somewhere else. So they went for containment. They built that custom glass cabinet, had it blessed by the church, and locked Annabelle away under permanent lock and key in their home. That became her infamous glass prison.
And the whole story, all the details, got documented later by Gerald Brittle in his 1980 book, The Demonologist.
Right. And Brittle's book includes included some really unsettling stuff that you don't see in the movies, like accounts of the doll levitating in Ed's office while making animalistic growls. A police detective apparently saw something that made him bolt out of the Warren house in pure terror. And this weird detail about a mysterious black cat that would just materialize next to Annabelle's case.
Okay, that's creepy. These stories definitely built up the mystique. And then there's that really famous anecdote, the one you always hear, about the college kid in the 80s. Visited the museum, supposedly knocked on Annabelle's case, dared it to do something.
And died in a motorcycle crash hours later.
Yeah, it's a super compelling cautionary tale. But, it's important to say there doesn't appear to be any actual evidence to suggest this ever happened. It really highlights the skepticism that always swirled around the Warrens and how powerful doubt, or maybe the lack of doubt, is, and how these stories take shape and spread.
Absolutely. And that potent mix of folklore, alleged events, and sheer speculation, it was the perfect recipe for Hollywood. Cut to 2013, The Conjuring hits theaters, and suddenly the whole world knows Anna, but not as a Raggedy Ann. They know her as that terrifying porcelain doll. Yeah, that transformation wasn't random at all. There were a couple of big reasons. One was definitely Hasbro owns the trademark for Rag, so portraying their doll as demonic could have led to big legal trouble for Warner Brothers' trademark to call it.
Makes sense. Avoid the lawsuit.
Pretty much. But beyond that, it was a creative decision, too. The director, James Wan, reportedly wanted something much scarier. A real night. The cracked porcelain, those creaky blood-red lips, the totally lifeless eye. It taps right into what psychologists call the uncanny valley. That weird feeling we get when something looks almost human, but not quite. It's deeply unsettling.
Plus, a lot of people are genuinely scared of dolls.
Yeah.
Clinically scared. Isn't it something like 9 million Americans?
Yeah, around 9.1 million report a clinical phobia. So Wan's design choice, apparently also influenced by his liking for ventriloquist puppets, was really effective horror design.
Mm-hmm. And Hollywood didn't just change the doll's look. They kind of streamlined the whole backstory and the theology behind it, right?
Totally. The movies really lean into simplified Catholic horror, wavering faith, invisible demons, holy water as the go-to weapon. It's pretty different from the Warrens' real-life approach, which was way more eclectic.
Eclectic, how?
Well, their spiritual toolbox reportedly mixed traditional faith with folk rituals, Lorraine's psychic impressions, even references to things like voodoo and hoodoo sometimes. Hollywood simplified all that, probably to make the story easier to digest for a huge global audience, avoid getting bogged down in complex alienating.
And man, did it work. The Conjuring made, over $300 million? It launched this massive cinematic universe.
Oh, yeah. The spin-offs Annabelle, Annabelle Creation, Annabelle Comes Home. They turned it into the highest-grossing horror franchise ever. Annabelle became a true pop culture horror icon.
Which brought Annabelle mania to this huge peak in the late 2010s, even though by then the real-life Warrens weren't around. Ed died in 2006, Lorraine in 2019.
Right. So after they were both gone, the responsibility for their infamous occult museum fell to their daughter, Judy Warren, and her husband, Tony Spera. But then in 2019, the museum itself, which is in their house in Monroe, Connecticut, actually had to close.
Why? What happened?
Basically, zoning violation. The problem was this near-endless parade of thrill-seeking tourists. Apparently, the neighborhood got totally gridlocked. People were being obnoxious. It just became unsustainable as a resident.
Wow. Closed by its own popularity.
Kind of ironic, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was against this weird backdrop, plus the whole surreal vibe of 2020 pandemic, wildfires, you name it, that the crazy Annabelle escaped hoax blew up.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was wild. How did that even start?
It was a mistranslation. Some Chinese media outlets were reporting on the actress Annabelle Wallis talking about a scene where she was running with Tom Cruise in The Mummy.
Okay.
The quote was something like Annabelle Wallis running, but it got mistranslated as Annabelle.
No way. That's it.
That was apparently the spark. It somehow went Wikipedia official for a bit, and social media just loaded. Theories, memes, total frenzy.
So Tony Spera had to jump in.
Yeah, he had to do damage control fast. Posted a video from inside the closed museum showing Annabelle safe in her case, basically saying, relax everyone, she's still here. Though he did admit later he wasn't too beaten up about all the free publicity it generated for the doll's future.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Because while Annabelle hadn't escaped like the rumor said, she did eventually leave the museum. Starting in 2021, Tony Spera, saying he got thousands of requests after the museum closed, began taking Annabelle on the road for public appearances at paranormal conventions.
Whoa, taking Annabelle on tour.
Yep. The Devil's on the Run tour, they called it. But that decision immediately kicked off a whole debate about, commercializing the Warrens' legacy. Is this respectful? Is it just making money off fear?
Right. How did they handle, the safety aspect? I thought she was supposed to stay locked up.
Spera insisted they followed strict spiritual protocol. Lots of prayer, holy water, blessed relics around her for safe viewing. But it often meant moving Annabelle outside her original glass case, which seemed to directly contradict Ed Warren's old warning sign, positively do not open.
Yeah, that's a bit iffy.
And Dan Rivera, he was a paranormal investigator with NESPR, the New England Society for Paranormal Research. He actually built a new traveling case for her, and he often played up the danger involved in handling the doll.
Okay, so the tour happens. Any weird incidents?
Oh, yeah. The tour had some incredibly bizarre moments. May 2025, they're in New Orleans. A spirit box session allegedly catches the demon verbally attacking guests, like audibly.
Seriously?
That's the claim. Then, just 3 days later, 11 inmates escaped from a nearby prison, and the biggest sugarcane plantation in Louisiana mysteriously burns to the ground. Locals immediately started connecting the dots back to Annabelle's presence. Tour organizers got death threats. Someone even made a mocking meme about it.
Wow, that's intense. So Sperry had to deal with more escape rumors after that.
Yep. Again, in June 2025, when the doll was traveling between Chicago, he addressed them, but still seemed pretty okay with the free publicity.
Okay, this tour sounds cursed, but then it took a really tragic turn, didn't it?
It really did. July 2025, they're doing a tour stop in Getty. And Dan Rivera, the investigator who handled Annabelle, built her travel case, the one emphasizing the danger. He died suddenly. Natural causes, authorities said. He was only 54.
Oh my God, that's awful.
It was terrible. And while officially it was natural causes, the whispers started. Certain people, as reports put it, started blaming the doll, blaming the tour. They pointed to Rivera's role, his own stories about bad luck after moving her.
Of course they did.
Right. It just highlighted this huge split in how people see these. NESPR put out a respectful statement. Jason Hawes from Ghost Hunters publicly asked people not to blame the doll. But that core question lingered. How much power, how much agency do we give these objects and the stories around them? And you'd think that would be the end of the drama for a while.
But nope, not with Annabelle.
Not even close. Because then, August 2025, totally out of the blue, comedian Matt Rife and Elton Castee announced they bought the Warren House and the whole Occult Museum. They are now the legal guardians of all the artifacts, including Annabelle.
Wait, Matt Rife, the comedian, and Elton Castee from Vine and YouTube.
The very same. It's a fascinating new chapter. Their plan is apparently to run the place as an Airbnb by summer 2026 and eventually open a new proper museum getting around those old zoning issues. And apparently this deal was in the works for months before Dan Rivera tragically passed away.
Okay, so who are these guys in relation to the paranormal?
Well, Rife has shown a growing interest, and both he and Castee run that popular YouTube channel Overnight, where they do paranormal investigations, sometimes involving doll pranks. So they're definitely tapped into that modern online paranormal.
But this sale, it must have caused some waves within the Warren family, right?
Huge waves. It brought these deep family divisions right out into the... You've got Chris McKinnell. He's Ed and Lorraine's grandson, Judy's son. He actually co-founded the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research with Lorraine.
Okay, so he's involved in preserving the legacy, too.
Very much so. And there's a major ideological split here. Chris has been really outspoken against Tony Spera, Judy's husband. He's basically said Spera doesn't understand the paranormal, never worked a case. Back in May 2025, Chris posted on Instagram, specifically calling out the Devils on the Run tour, said it prioritized tours or theatrics over his grandparents' real mission, which was helping.
So he must have had thoughts on Rife and Castee buying everything.
Oh, absolutely. On August 2nd, 2025, he released a statement about the purchase. He talked about being increasingly estranged from his family because of the deep differences on how to handle the legacy. He said, quote, "This legacy matters. It's not a brand. It's not content. It's not entertainment. It's sacred." Strong words.
Wow. That really puts the whole commercialization debate front and center, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, Chris himself sells merchandise and takes donations through his foundation, so it's complicated. But the immediate, very high-profile commercial plans from Rife and Castee talking about loot boxes, streaming content, it definitely fuels that discussion. How do you tactfully, or maybe not so tactfully, make money from something people consider sacred, or at least genuinely terrifying? It's a very modern problem we're
What an absolutely wild ride we've taken you on today. Seriously. From a doll literally stitched together to comfort a sick kid, to being this silent, creepy witness at horrific murder, then a supposed demonic conduit locked up by famous demonologists. And now, a full-blown Hollywood horror icon tangled up in ongoing family feuds, commercial ventures, and endless online speculation. Annabelle's story is just this incredible mix of fact, legend, and pure personal belief.
Yeah, and if you sort of zoom out specifics, maybe the scariest part of her whole story isn't, or the doll itself, or even the jump scares in the movie. Maybe it's that moment when a person, anyone, kind of hands over their own age, when they start to accept that maybe paranormal forces do control their fate.
Right, when logic starts to wobble and that little bit of doubt creeps in, and you find yourself wondering, even for a second, okay, but what if it is true?
Exactly. So what does all this mean for you, listening right now? Maybe Annabelle represents something, I don't know, gloriously untamed, illogical, in a world that feels increasingly mapped out, measured, explained away. Maybe there's a part of us deep down that needs to believe the world still holds secrets, things we can't explain. Annabelle's real power, maybe it doesn't come from what's supposedly inside her. Maybe it comes from what's inside us.
What unseen forces might you be willing to entertain, even just for a moment? Makes you think, doesn't it?